Chapter 65, Town Square, Plainview, Texas, Saturday night, 8:55 p.m. Witnesses attributed the colossal ferrets galloping down Main Street to a marketing campaign gone awry, a film shoot with impressive props, or general hallucinations. Before reaching the square, the ferrets made a beeline for a patch of lichen growing along the children's splash pad in the local park, forcing a detour during which Alice was unloaded from the ferret saddle and strapped atop Jim's lap amongst the already overstuffed dune buggy. Marci ordered Esteban to stay back with the ferrets, as they were his mistake, though he accepted the demotion with aplomb, stepping from the driver's seat for Marci to assume control. As so often in these modern times, no one batted an eye at the spectacle evolving on the square. Rationalizing correctly, it had little to do with them as they went about their evening errands. Even in the throes of cosmic chaos, it seems the Finkles were damn near invisible to the naked American eye, as those out and about paid no attention to this minor confrontation between middle-aged couples taking place city center, itself host to countless other, more interesting distractions. The coffee shop, a children's boutique, a young man with long hair playing guitar on the corner, a wig consignment store, 3 restaurants, and a juice bar where Don's video store once stood. In the center of it all, the Plainview municipal buildings, and beside that, Uncle Phinneus's giant sundial sculpture as backdrop to this inevitable showdown. Bill and Marci carried Jim from the buggy and placed him to stand beside Alice as he boasted, "I couldn't have planned this any better." "How so, Jim?" Marci humored him, cutting the ties at Alice's hands with her sword, yet leaving both Sanders' ankles bound for safety. "How else could I get all of you morons in one spot?" Jim rationalized cheerfully, hopping protectively in front of Alice. The air vibrated with energy, the breeze electrifying with Uncle Phinneus's silent appearance beneath the sculpture. Jim went on, spotting Phinneus's arrival. "Oh, speak of the devil. There he is now. How nice to finally meet face to face, old man." "Uncle Phinneus," Bill greeted him, motioning to the clocks and the Sanders lined up on the sidewalk. "I'm glad you made it, but I've got unfortunate news." Yes, Phinneus waved Bill away, distractedly sighing. "We've determined rather quickly there was no Aunt Penelope, Bill." Stepping closer to Jim, he demanded, "So just what is it you want from me, Jim Sanders?" "I want the astro clock." Jim threw out his uninjured arm, threatening, "And you have 10 minutes to fetch it from wherever it is you've hidden it, or I'll murder you all." "You know I don't have the authorization to turn that over to you, Jim Sanders," Phinneus confessed. "Then I'll find it myself. After I kill all of you, I'll go to every place you've ever been and search it twice," Jim screeched, his face growing redder. Phinneus recited, "You know nothing good ever comes from traveling to the past." Jim joined Phinneus's incantation, finishing the sentence with him derisively. "The past is the past and it's already happened." "If you know so much about the first clock, then you know how it works," Phinneus lectured pompously. "You know it's a one-way wormhole that goes right back to Elos, from where and when our rebelling ancestors fled. Do you know what those Elosians are like? They are barbarians. You open that door, and they will slaughter you and me and everyone and everything on Earth and suck up what's left of our resources. It will be a repeat of what they did to their own planet." With a boom and a whoosh, Marivel appeared beside Phinneus, dusting his sleeves fussily and blinking his eyes as he peered about the landscape. "Ah, there you are." Marivel focused on Phinneus. "You made it. And Bill, this must be your Marci. I'm quite frankly a bit surprised you made it this far, and with the Sanders and boat clocks in hand as well. Phinneus, was your mission successful?" "Almost." Phinneus bobbed his head, indicating the small crowd at hand and the sculpture looming over them. "Are we expecting anyone else?" Jim roared in frustration. hopping several steps in front of the group before springing 180 degrees to face everyone, balancing precariously on his bound feet as he shifted violently to pat his many pockets, wincing as he worked around the arrow still jutting from his shoulder.
Or can I start the countdown now?
Countdown? Marci repeated.
Yes!
Jim held up his wrist, tipping his head to indicate the dwindling countdown on his digital watch, the screen too dark and too small for anyone except himself to see, announcing,
"And now that Marivel has finally arrived, we can continue."
He raised his voice, shaking his wrist.
"As of 3 minutes ago, you had 10 minutes to produce the astro clock, or everyone here gets it."
Jim fished a grenade from a cargo pant pocket and held it over his head.
"I'm already counting."
"You wouldn't," Bill scoffed, turning to consult the others. "Wait, how long does that give us?" The huddle spent an agonizing additional minute debating how long they had to achieve this.
"You have,"
Jim huffed, covertly rechecking his watch while hopping closer to the Finkles and Marivel, clarifying,
10 minutes. Just get me the goddamn clock."
Marivel balked, stepping past the huddle to confront the Sanders, his eyes moving over Jim's shoulder and falling to Alice, then widening in recognition.
"Alisana?"
he murmured.
"I remember you."
Alice squeaked in disbelief, her brows furrowing.
"You were one of my father's spies."
Marivel smiled sadly, gesturing to Alice, explaining, "I would recognize that face anywhere. It was on every coin in Atlantis. You look just like the Queen, Alisana. Just like your mother at this age. She was a great leader, very brave." Alice made a small choking noise, a solitary tear dropping down her cheek as she nodded. Phinneus broke in.
"I thought the Atlantean royals perished."
Marivel shrugged wistfully. "A few lucky ones found a way forward like us. Money talks. Clocks sell. I did know her father, in fact. It was he, the king, who hired me to protect time and time travelers. And then, in the very end, to save his family. You see, the king's commissioned clock was stolen en route from the Atlantean science labs, the last clock to be created, which he'd purchased at great cost to flee the coming destruction. Against the queen's wishes, of course. She'd vowed to go down with her kingdom." Alice paled, looking at Jim as if he were a stranger. "You said you'd stolen our clocks from the labs where you worked."
"Robbing the rich was my work,"
Jim admitted coldly, ignoring Alice's moans of protestation.
"And I did work in the Atlantean science labs. Every day, cleaning their messes, serving their meals. I saw what they were building while the world burned. I heard whispers about the time-traveling clocks being built. Heard the stories about reverse engineering the fabled Atlantean astro clock in secrecy. So I waited. I was patient. I played the game."
"The game of fooling me," Alice cried, "of talking me into running away with you. You lied to me to save yourself."
"I saved you too, didn't I?" Jim protested. "Your family, however, sucked and didn't deserve to live. Even your smallest sister was a ghastly little bully."
"And that means they," Alice realized with horror.
Small loss,"
Jim shrugged, hopping forward to smirk at Marivel under the streetlight. "Don't recognize me, do you, Marivel?" Marivel's blank eyes met Jim's before Jim continued, his voice growing bitter. "This is all because of you, you know. If you had never questioned me after sending my rebel brother to be reprogrammed, if you hadn't shown an interest in me, if I'd never been apprenticed in those labs, we were both their lapdogs, Marivel, and you still are."
"Enough,"
Marivel ordered firmly, glancing up at the looming sculpture over his left shoulder, then to Uncle Phinneus with a nod. "It's almost time." Turning to face Jim, Marivel proclaimed, "Not only will I not give you the astro clock, Jameson, I'm confiscating your stolen clock as well. Consider yourself banished in time, punishment for high time crimes as mandated by the Royal Atlantean Science Council." Bill suppressed a giggle as Marci's sharp elbow dug into his ribs. Marivel swiveled his head and wagged a finger at Bill, continuing, "I'll be reclaiming your clock as well, Bill. It will go back to your uncle.
You aren't ready, obviously." Bill opened his mouth to protest, but was cut off as Marivel concluded with a cold frown. "Considering all of your ridiculous antics, be glad you're getting off this easily." Phinneus nodded solemnly in agreement, patting Bill's shoulder as he strode past him to stand beneath the sculpture, where he ran a hand along the smooth metal panel jutting from its triangular stone centerpiece, bobbing his head as his fingers traveled down the spine of the panel until he stopped with a satisfied grin, placing both hands on the ridge of the spine and pushing in until there was an audible click. The panel separated into two identical metallic plates, the first of which Phinneus moved to a 90-degree angle. The second panel he adjusted to a 45-degree angle. The apex of the two panels buttressed against the center stone, the stone itself now glowing with an unearthly internal light. Great blue and green veins running through the heart of the ancient rock, pulsating hypnotically, the sculpture seeming to suddenly come to life. "I know we've spoken of this before." Phinneus nudged one of the panels out another notch while glancing up at the sky, pontificating. "But this part of Texas is rich in a very specific array of rare minerals. The deposits, a result of ancient Elosian meteors, sent for this very reason, in fact." "It can't be," Jim murmured, his awed gaze traveling over the sundial sculpture he'd stared at for the past 40 years while in pursuit of the astro clock. He seemed mildly disappointed. "I could have had it any time." "No, you couldn't." Marivel stepped forward, lecturing pompously. "You see, a clock like this, it takes power to operate the likes of which you've never seen, never had to generate. The power of the minerals under our feet, combined with the magnifying effects of the aligning stars, can carry us so far forward, we circle back around to the beginning. The infinite circle. No rules broken. You see, we aren't going back. We're going forward. To the past. Once there, we'll leave the astro clock at the very edge of destruction where it belongs, and set things right." "It's ready!" Phinneus cried, as the Finkles and the Sanders' confiscated clocks began to chime. The air around them vibrated with pulsing energy, and a droning buzzing filled their ears. Boom.